Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Brendan Lee with Consciousness and Skill Worldwide, founded by Peter Ralston. In this video, I want to talk to you about communication. This question came to me from my website where I have a discussion board where people can come in, ask questions, get feedback from each other, get feedback from me, and then I also get some inspiration to make these videos. So in this video, the question is, what is communication? So, all right, we're going to take a look at communication now. One of the things I want to invite you to consider, one is you do the work. Okay, I want to invite you right up front to start getting responsible for your own experience on the matter. It is one thing, and it is very easy, and I do believe like YouTube as a platform and any other, even written forms and in this day and age and culture, it's very easy to just take what somebody has said, believe it, think it's correct, and then move on. That's the easy way to go. And that is the first thing that happens when you get some new information or new knowledge. You read a book perhaps, you go, oh, that makes sense. Then you have a new thought, okay, and then it stops at the thinking. I'm totally okay with this. However, I want you to consider that for your own learning and growth, it would behoove you to go way past that, okay? So get past your thinking and even how you feel and all this other stuff. I just want to keep encouraging you to be responsible for your own learning and growth, because that's what anybody who's ever made any serious progress, that's what they've done. Okay? So that being said, communication. See, what is it? It's the first question. Like, what is it? What is communication? See, is communication the words? Well, we couldn't necessarily say that because I can say the words, but you may not get the communication. So then what is communication if that's the case, right? Now, I can also communicate by gesturing. See, if you are living in today's culture, you likely get a lot of stuff being communicated even through gestures. So and yet, if you did not understand the gestures, would I be communicating? See, so is the communication the language, like the actual spoken word? Well, no, because we also have sign language. You see, but then the language is one thing, right? I can language all I want, but if you don't get it, then you don't get it. You don't grasp what I'm saying. And then we would say, you didn't get my communication. So then that still begs the question, what is it? If it's not the words themselves, if it's not the gestures, what is the communication? There's something, as if perhaps something, that we're calling communication. And I'm not talking about semantics. Very often people say, well, then it's just semantics. No, I'm not talking about semantics. I'm talking about what the reality of communication is. And I'm inviting you to consider that for yourself in this video. Okay, so then what is it? You see, I have a story. I was working with my buddy a long time ago. He actually brought his friend out. I think it was a girlfriend at the time, and they came out to the dojo. We were hanging in the center, and we did lots of physical training, which is another thing I love to do. And we were considering something after the fact in the consciousness work domain, which is where this video is happening, in that domain. And he was asking me about communication. I was trying to get across something about communication, and I said, look. And we went back and forth for a while until finally he had like a big breakthrough. He's like, oh, I get it. And here's what I was going on about. I invited him to take a look, and I want you to do the same thing right now, is notice that the communication itself, when something actually gets across, it is not the same as the words and the sounds that come out of my mouth. The communication, when something actually gets across to you, is not the same as the sounds and the words that come out of my mouth. And I kept saying that to him over and over, and eventually he got like, oh, like he could actually see it. So what I'm saying is that the words and sounds that come out of my mouth are words and sounds. You make meaning out of that, and even though you make meaning out of that, still something can get across. Something can make it from one being to another. How that happens, I have no idea. Okay? No idea. And yet it can happen. All right, so now communication in this case is when an experience gets across from one being, one sentient being to another. Now, when I say sentient, what I mean is like alive, aware, and can grasp that there is another human being out there. You see, a cabbage does not have, we don't have communication with cabbages. We don't have communication with people in a comatose state because they are not there. See, there needs to be someone there. I'm talking about communication between human beings. Okay? So now the components of communication, as we consider in the workshops that I lead and facilitate, one of which being the communication relationship workshop, which you're invited to do, shameless plug. Okay, come on down, do some work with me or Peter Ralston, very powerful stuff, is the components. There needs to be basically you, another, the ability to recognize each other, and a shared experience. So what I mean is by you is like you got to be there. You don't get communication just because you're there. You see? Like if you're in a room and just because you're there and then I communicate something towards you, you don't grasp it just by being there. You have to actually actively be considering and listening for something getting across from another human being. If you're not doing that, you will not get the communication. So there needs to be one part, like me, one sentient being, another sentient being, the ability to communicate, and then a shared experience. And the communication, like when somebody actually grasps the communication, that aspect is when my experience gets across to another human being. And again, please reference my story. It's like it's not the same as the words. It's like, have you ever had a time... Like, here's another story, for example. I used to live in Hawaii, and I used to train a lot of martial arts over at BJ Penn's place with his brother Jay. Basically, I got my butt handed to me by a bunch of Hawaiian guys for a long time, but I learned a lot about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was great. And so anyway, it doesn't matter. I would go home. I had an apartment. I was working in a little pizza shop, and I would bike uphill 3 miles to get home. And then there was this guy that was living there, and this guy was from California, and he was maybe a little older gentleman, and going through some rough time in his life, but he was living in Hawaii, and I met him there. And he was living in this random apartment, and he would always have like tons of Corona beers. I'd bring home the pizza, biking home, and then I would go up and he would tell me these stories. And he kept telling me these stories about this particular couple of people, and these people, he'd say, you got to watch out for people like that. And it's like he would talk about these people and how they did weird things, and he's like, you got to watch out. And I was like, what? And I didn't understand why he kept saying, because he on multiple occasions he would mention this to me. You gotta watch out. I'm like, okay, yeah, watch out. And then he'd say it again another night even. You gotta watch out for these people. And then at one point I was going home. I went home. He was talking to me again. He was going on about these people, and I got it. I was suddenly, oh, you care about me. Oh, I grasped that he was communicating that he cared about me in that instant. And so what I'm saying with this is he was trying to get something across, and then I got something about what he was communicating that I had never got before, and that felt very real. It's like, oh, that's your experience. Ah, I get it. You see? So what I'm saying with that is that the grasping of somebody else's experience is when it actually gets across. Okay? Now, I'm not saying, because very often this one will come up, is people will be like, well, Do you get exactly the same experience? Like if I think about a red fire truck, are you going to get a red fire truck over there? And no, the answer is no, it's not going to show up that way, but I can grasp that you're thinking. I could even grasp, if we worked on it, your experience of the thought of the red fire truck. I could really get into that and be connected to your experience much more directly than if I was just sort of thinking about it intellectually. You see? So it's not necessarily black and white in a sense, but it's more like I can grasp your communication to a greater or lesser degree. And the communication itself is when that experience gets across to another human being. That is what we're calling communication. Communication itself. See? All right? So now, remember that, one, I hope this video has been of some use to you asking the question. And remember to continue to consider it in your own experience. Because that's the only place where you actually get to show up, you see? And it is definitely one thing to hear about what I'm saying. It's another thing to intellectualize what I'm saying. And it's another thing entirely to experientially grasp what I'm talking about. The thing to do about that would be to consider in your own life, like, what is communication? And start to watch it, observe it occurring. And grasp what it is, like grasp its nature, grasp the whole functionality, and what even allows for it to exist in the first place. And you'll be working your way toward this existential thinking business that I'm talking about, and that Peter Rawlinson will definitely talk about. And it does seem to yield some very interesting results in terms of increasing my own consciousness and awareness on that matter, or any matter, for example. You can apply it to anything. All right? So thank you very much for watching. This is Brendan Lee with Consciousness and Skill Worldwide, founded by Peter Rawlinson. Please check out the links in the description if you want to get serious. Hit up my discussion board, ask me questions. I am using these questions to create video content. And come to a workshop, get real, get more serious. Let's get busy. Okay? Thanks again. I'll catch you later. Bye.